This is a possibility wave presentation. It's a narrated PowerPoint. And the subject of the presentation is Signal Encoding Theory in Biofeedback. I'm Garnet Dupuis. I'm your presenter. I'm the co-founder and creative designer of Possibility Wave, which is a company that produces information-coded biofeedback applications and programs. If you'd like to contact us for more information or to become involved in some way, you can go to our website, possibilitywave.com. That's possibilitywave.com. It would be a pleasure. So, why do a presentation like this? At Possibility Wave, we really are motivated by the experience of learning and creating tools and products and the circumstance for experience that helps in every kind of positive way. So when you're involved with learning, you learn pretty quickly that it's really best when it's shared. So a presentation like this and others that will be coming forward are really expressions of the fact that we want to share what it is that we learn. You know, this subject, the non-material signal encoding, is such an important aspect in this new generation of biofeedback. The idea that there is this phenomena of information and that it can be accessed, it can be recognized, in a sense, captured in a way that allows it to be useful in a reproducible manner. And this presentation, which you'll see is in 4 parts, focuses on the signal encoding theory in biofeedback. And to the best of my experience, to the best of my knowledge, it's never really been openly discussed in such a way that you look at the concept, the background, the theoretical approaches and methodology, what makes it something that's useful. So this whole presentation focuses on our best efforts to look at how to understand and even justify the use of non-material signal stimulations in information-coded biofeedback. It's a demanding subject. It's a fascinating subject. I find it exciting and really meaningful, not because it's something that is restricted to the domain of information-coded biofeedback, or even the larger domain of biofeedback, but really a recognition and a reflection of, I believe, just how life is anyway, looking a lot more deeply at even the principle of biofeedback as it exists in nature. So I'd like us first of all to make an agreement, if you don't mind. It's about words. Words are obviously very useful, but they're also very tricky. And in my experience, especially the verbs. The same word can have different connotations to different people. So what I'd like to do is have us agree that we're not going to jump to conclusions. Any particular word I use or any kind of term or terminology, I'm doing my best to use in a way that reflects the context and content of the presentation. Words are wonderful, but we have to be careful. So let's go ahead and see the best we can do. One of the very first, and I don't want to create confusion, is around the term encoding or coding. The subject of the presentation is information encoding, right? Signal encoding theory in biofeedback. But the word coding or encoding is used in computer programming. You know, it refers to the input of instructions that determine the functions of software. So I'm not a computer programmer. This is not a presentation on how to code software. In this presentation, these terms are used to refer to the processes of accessing, translating, and storing subtle information packets from a very wide variety of substances and states. So coding or encoding, when I talk about the process of encoding, I talk about information coded biofeedback, the term is used in a manner that is, you can say, conceptually similar, but I am not presenting here software coding for computer programs. I've mentioned 4 parts. These are the titles of the 4 parts, and this particular presentation is on number 1, the boundaries of belief. The other 3 parts will be presented separately. The suggestion is try to experience them in sequence. Or you can, of course, listen or watch to any one that you want, but they're really developed in sequence so that one leads to the other. The boundaries of belief is this part 1. Part 2 is called compassionate communication. Part 3, energy encoding of signals, and part 4, the information encoding of signals. So each one has a subject or a topic. This first one, the boundaries of belief, I think it's critical, and why we have it here as number 1 is the fact that when you approach any subject, especially a demanding one, it's absolutely necessary to have a good, strong look at the belief systems that we have and how they will affect our understanding of a subject. And in this case, the signal encoding theory of biofeedback really is, will push a lot of sensitive buttons in terms of belief systems. So this part 1 is going to be exploring belief systems and introduce you specifically to the belief system of possibility wave and how we frame the whole concept of information coded biofeedback and signal encoding theory as in this presentation. Part number 2, compassionate communication, looks at the nature of communication itself. And it's a development from the part 1, the boundaries of belief. I don't know if it strikes you, but the title itself, compassionate communication, is in and itself provocative. Part 3, entitled Energy Encoding of Signals, is the use of applied energy in the encoding of information signals. So there are, right away you get the impression that there are kind of 2 general approaches to creating or encoding information signals. One involves energetic processes, the application of energy, and the other, which is part 4, the information encoding of signals, is the use of pure information in the encoding of these information signals. So part 1 and part 2 create a lot of groundwork, a lot of foundation, a lot of perspective that then is sort of always present in the background of part 3 and part 4. Okay, part number 1, the boundaries of belief. It is highly, highly encouraged, I believe, just in life, but to have an examined life, to honestly, as best you can with whatever techniques or processes that you can, to have a really good look at what you experience as reality. You know, I'm saying here that just to even give a fair consideration of the central theme of this presentation, we really have to have a good look at some of the ways we interpret reality. This part one sets the stage for then a deep look into the other sections, the signal encoding theory and biofeedback in general, and the more technical parts of part 3 and part 4. So, I don't know, let's strap on our seatbelt and see what we can do here. Okay, the first step. I don't think this is news, but it keeps unfolding in a sobering series of experiences in life, I believe and see, that we all have our own personal view of reality. And I suppose the naive interpretation is that everybody sees or views reality, life, in the same way. If you've had the good fortune to either travel or even live in different countries, as I have, and I am right now, some of you may know that I'm up in the northern area of Thailand, up in the tropical mountain rainforest. It's where I live. I'm looking out the window right now at a gorgeous, precious thing, the rainforest. And if you have the chance to travel, live, especially in different cultures, what you recognize is that the dominant view of the culture, especially the one you're raised in, has a very strong influence on your personal view of reality. You know, it's been said, and I forgot who said it, but it's been said that when you travel, the country you learn most about is your own. So this personal view of reality, influenced by the view of your dominant culture, this creates a perspective, and this perspective acts as a kind of filter or even a metric of any serious exploration of experience and phenomena. It's a never-ending discovery, I would say, at least it seems to me. For every truth, there is a proof, but not every proof is acceptable to every mind. If you've done your best to inspect your view of reality, and you've tried to share it openly in discussion, sometimes argument, you recognize that what might seem really obvious to you may not seem so obvious to some other person. So let's proceed here with as open a mind as possible, knowing that we'll move towards conclusions more slowly and give these ideas a chance. Axiom. It's a great word. And for any of you that have had trainings in the sciences, especially mathematics, it'll be a familiar term. An axiom is buried, in some cases, in all of these different corners of our view of reality. And what's an axiom? Well, to be a little bit more technical, it's a statement or a proposition that is regarded as being established. It's accepted. It's just self-evidently true. Another way of saying it, an axiom is a self-evident truth that requires no proof. Axiom. A self-evident truth that requires no proof. That's fascinating. That's fascinating. It just is, and you don't need to question it. There is not even any requirement to prove it. Let's go a little bit deeper into this, because recognizing the axiom or axioms that dominate your view of reality have a profound effect on any exploration of any interesting, demanding, important topic, including the one of this presentation. So a deeper definition. It's a proposition. An axiom is a proposition that is assumed without proof. That assumption quality brings a whole different dimension into it. A proposition that is assumed without proof for the sake of studying the consequences that follow from it. Now, this is a much more matured appreciation of an axiom, because in this case, you're consciously assuming it without proof, as opposed to unconsciously, as opposed to it's just, well, it's just real, it's just true. So that you can go ahead and study something. You can see the consequences that occur when you assume or follow that axiom. So what that means is that if the study of whatever, if it doesn't confirm the axiom, one must then modify the axiom to fit the actual findings. Whoa. Think about that. Think about what it is that you may have as an axiom, and whether you hold to it rigidly or whether you recognize that it's an assumption that you've somehow, maybe just straight from your culture, who knows, somehow you've accepted it without proof. But now you have to go ahead and study the consequences of living with this axiom. And does the study confirm the axiom or not? Are you willing to modify the axiom or not? So an axiom is accepted, it's assumed, without proof, but you have faith. But then you go ahead based on that faith and you honestly and openly test the axiom. And does it yield proof once it's tested? Because it's accepted without proof. But does it prove itself empirically, experientially, honestly? And if it does, then you can recognize openly and consciously that you've accepted this and that it is a belief that you have, that you can live by, you can act by this belief. However, if you have axioms and you believe, you have faith, you hold them, and I don't use faith here in the religious sense, you have that acceptance, you believe, but you're not willing to test it, or you're not willing to accept any kind of evidence contrary to it. This does not result in a matured belief. This is the creation of a dogma that you're willing to defend, even if the axiom doesn't follow the test and proof of your experience. So, obviously, the recommendation here is assume the axiom, see the consequences, born in a faithful test, see what kind of proof comes forward, and accept it as your belief. Because remember, all beliefs have certain boundaries. Outside that boundary, you're not willing to trespass. A few examples of what I would consider open minds in relation to axioms. As some of you may know, the Dalai Lama has frequently and regularly engaged in very exciting forms of discussion with different professional groups. Many of them have been translated into books. He says, if a scientific analysis were conclusively to demonstrate certain claims in Buddhism to be false, then we must accept the findings of science and abandon those claims. That's a remarkable statement from a world religious and spiritual leader. Exceptional. To me, it's an open mind. Another one, it's a little bit funny, but still on the record, from the famed Dr. Einstein. A student asked, Dr. Einstein, aren't these the same questions as last year's physics final exam? To which Einstein answers, well, yes, but this year the answers are different. So I think axioms are a reality, not just in mathematics or certain scientific approaches, but they're just fundamental to the way that we use our intellect to help make sense of our life. Okay, there is a current scientific axiom. It's spreading throughout the world quite effectively. And the current scientific axiom could be expressed like this, that universal reality is a completely material phenomenon. It results from the random interactions of lifeless objects. Life as we know it, including consciousness, is an epiphenomena or a byproduct, and it has no inherent purpose. This, as a philosophy, with this axiom at the core, is generally known as scientific materialism. Completely material phenomena, random interactions, lifeless objects, life, consciousness, and epiphenomena, byproduct, what I would call like the foam on the beer, or maybe the foam on the cappuccino. It has no inherent purpose, they say, scientific materialism. Now, to be, I guess, clear, possibility wave is very much pro-science. The scientific method, in its purity, is a fantastic mode of investigation and study. To investigate and to study following this method is really a remarkable evolution in our testing of experience. Possibility wave just doesn't accept the axiom and philosophy of scientific materialism. So we are pro-science, no doubt about it, absolutely. But scientific materialism, its tenets, its axioms, are not acceptable. We just don't agree that this is the way reality is and behaves. Advances in quantum physics over the past roughly 100 years have totally disassembled the constructs of scientific materialism. It's amazing that it sticks so firmly in the light of all of what we now know to be true at the foundational level of all that we experience in this thing called creation. And of course, traditional wisdom, in light of this, is now being revisited in a scientific manner because the correlations are extremely attractive. I would say not conclusive because traditional wisdoms have a variety of expressions, different ways of looking and seeing and expressing what may be the same thing. So it's not hard and fast because even traditional wisdoms are not a perfect hand and glove fit, but certainly it's a hand and mitten fit, no doubt. So here at Possibility Wave, we, like a lot of people, it's hardly unique to us, but we recognize that there's this next step evolution going on in the scientific mind and communities, at least portions of it. And we choose to describe this next step evolution as mystical science, kind of a blend of the higher mindedness of science, the investigation processes, and many of the apparent correlations that are occurring in relation to different wisdom traditions through human history. Okay, so I've described a bit the axiom of our current scientific philosophy. I think it's fair now for you to ask, well, what's the axiom of possibility wave? I'd like to describe that. This is what we accept to be true. The axiom, the fundamental axiom of possibility wave is that awareness is the primary and fundamental matrix of reality. Awareness. Awareness is the primary and fundamental matrix of reality. And here, just as a side note, it's kind of interesting, I think like a lot of you, the movie trilogy, The Matrix, has really brought the term up into a more common usage, but if you go back into the formation, the root of the word, matrix means literally great mother, the great mother. So the matrix Awareness is the great mother of reality, if you want to use the word in that way. With this axiom, all aspects of consciousness are seen as variable modulations of awareness. All aspects of consciousness are variable modulations of awareness. Information, energy, and matter are all expressions of awareness. So the issue of awareness is primary and fundamental to the axiom that possibility wave has, and bases all of our theory, our context, all the design principles of our information-coded biofeedback apps. Let's have a little look here briefly at the issue of awareness in relation to traditional wisdom. Pure awareness has been recognized as the fundamental matrix of reality by wisdom traditions throughout human history. I think it's very difficult to argue that. Naturally, the way they describe it, knowing very well that not only are there different languages, but different eras, and how we translate from one era to the other, even in the same language, let alone from one language of a culture to another, it takes some patient introspection as to how things are expressed. But there's really no doubt that wisdom traditions, in their own right, in their own way, have always recognized awareness as the fundamental matrix of reality. And here, just as an example, is an icon from the Dzogchen tradition found in Tibetan Buddhism. It's a tradition that is familiar to me, so I derive my examples from it. I've studied and practiced in other traditions as well, as many of you have, and undoubtedly various traditions will express the same in a different way. But this is an example from Dzogchen. What you see in the upper right-hand corner, if you're looking at the slide, is a blue male Buddha in what's called the AXIOM, in an embrace of a white female Buddha. This is iconic. It's a representation of what? Well, the blue Buddha, the male Buddha, is meant to represent awareness. And the white female is meant to represent emptiness. We'll talk more about emptiness, but you can think of emptiness as the complete unrestricted freedom of manifestation. So this is an iconic representation, Samantabhadra, Samantabhadri, in the Sanskrit, of the nature of awareness and its emptiness. I know a lot of you have encountered and maybe understood deeply the principle of emptiness in Buddhism, but just in case, it's one of the most easily misunderstood terms and intended concepts in Buddhism. Basically, emptiness means that there's nothing hard or permanent in nature, that all of reality, what we experience, is a flow of interdependent events that are very fluid in their manifestation. Event, a word I'm substituting here for thing. It's not a reification, it's not a thing, it's not an object, it's an event. And many, including myself, have recognized how well this corresponds with many of the best evaluations in quantum physics. This non-substantial, non-material, non-object quality that's been well recognized early in human history, especially in the expressions of Buddhism. And this quality is called the emptiness. It's not nihilistic, it's not negative, it's not like, oh, there's nothing like it. No. It's a tremendous recognition of the nature of things. So the principle, I'll call it, of emptiness this emptiness nature of reality has got just such profound implications in how we appreciate things. What it means is that this fluid freedom of manifestation allows for the effortless morphology of information, energy, and matter. These dynamics are fluidly interdependent and not clearly separate, one to the other, and we have to try to figure out, geez, how are they connected because we think they're separate. All of these expressions, and right now I'll limit them to the information, energy, and matter trio, they appear uniquely different, but they're expressions. And their essential nature remains always the same. And what is the essential nature? Awareness. And it's the emptiness aspect that allows for this to be true. I think probably, even if a person hasn't any study or need or involvement with Buddhism, probably have heard at least from one of the famous sutras, the Heart Sutra, and here it's shown with some Chinese calligraphy, that form is emptiness and emptiness is form. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Pondering this has opened so many doors for so many deep thinkers. And then when it corresponds to experience, it changes everything. So this is, samples of expressions, different implications that come forward from the axiom that possibility wave accepts and assumes that awareness is the matrix of reality. Yeah, even in a Western tradition, in a non-spiritual, although you could argue it's spiritual, Leonardo, famous Leonardo da Vinci, wrote that the being of nothing is the greatest, and what is in between things is supreme. There are so many examples of expressions like this, and Leonardo, such an extraordinary human with such insight, was capturing this in his own way and trying to express it. Naturally, he didn't write it in English, he wrote it in Italian, but here we are. Massimo Citro is a medical scientific researcher, and I'm quoting him here. He says, the field is pulsation in the emptiness. That is, vibrating emptiness, a pulsating vacuum. The particles that make up mass might actually be disturbances of the field, ripples in the vacuum. So, you can see here that terminology keeps evolving. You remember at the very beginning of all of this, I was encouraging all of us, including myself, to keep an open mind, to not jump to conclusions about terms, because same words obviously can be used in different contexts. And when you jump time to time, culture to culture, language to language, there are a lot of places where you can trip. But the idea is, try to get the intent, the meaning behind these efforts, these word efforts. Modern physics considered, and this is new in our era, vacuums as the source of all fields and forces. A vacuum is, we think, well, that means like zero, zip, nothing, nada, useless. But no, now there's an appreciation of this stuff that we call vacuum. Vacuum means like there's nothing there, right? It's kind of basically what it is. But no, it seems now to be the source of all fields and forces, which is a mind bender, I can say for myself. Up top in the right-hand corner, you can see the most famous Zen symbol trying to capture that. So here, emptiness, being careful how we use the word, is the matrix. Remembering from that Dzogchen icon that awareness and emptiness merged, two aspects, same thing. you know, this is a tremendous point to contemplate. The fact that we know now with clear evidence that all matter is composed of assemblies of atoms, and this, of course, means that my body, your body, our bodies, all the stuff that we see, all other physical beings are composed of atoms. And yet, one of the principal fathers of, or parents of quantum physics, Werner Heisenberg, he said it very clearly. He says, listen, an atom is not a thing. It's not a thing because all the particles that make up an atom are themselves not things. Particles are information-coded energetic events. So, you know, I'm looking now down at my hands and parts of my body, and, you know, it kind of looks like one way, but then when I think about more deeply, that it's just a composition of these information-coded energetic events. I don't know, it makes me breathe a little bit more deeply or something. Because the fact is that every atom, also the atoms that I'm slapping right now in my hand, 99.999% space. So that means my body and your body, 99.999% space. You remember whoa, wait a minute, what's this space thing? Is it nothing or is it something? That even the 0.0001% that is made up of the particles, as opposed to the space between the particles, even those aren't things, as Werner Heisenberg says. They're not things, they're information-coded energetic events. We're just one big expression of this I don't know, stunning emptiness. So remember that this space, of which we're 99.999% made up of, this space, this void, this vacuum is not nothing. Hear the word plenum. Plenum means everything. It's everything waiting to express itself. It exists in an invisible state, in, I don't know, another dimension or potential or something like that. You know, why are we talking about these things? Let's remember that the basis of part one is the demand for us to have a good close look at the boundaries of our belief. And this helps set the stage to understand the signal encoding theory and biofeedback, and as an extension of that, information-coded biofeedback, but I would say as an extension of that, to better understand just how life works. And as a consequence of better understanding it in this context, what kinds of things are possible? And what doors will open in your belief system if you appreciate that? Referring back again to Tibetan Buddhism, the specific school called Dzogchen, there is this description of what they call the 5 pure lights. In that little image that you see in the upper right-hand corner is a personification, again, an iconic representation of these different Buddhas, and you'll notice that they're in different colors. They say that they're these 5 pure lights. And if you don't recognize their actual nature, the vibratory, informational, energetic nature of these, what they call 5 pure lights, that these 5 pure lights, they appear as the 5 classical elements: space, earth, air, water, fire. That's what they look like. That's their appearance. That's what they look like to you. That's what they look like to me. If we're not able to recognize their true nature, that's their appearance. To go a little bit more deeply into that, they say that this, what we would call space, you know, right now the distance between me and the microphone and the computer screen and the window and the trees, if I go in between the mic and the screen, there's this thing called space, and it's, well, it's just sort of, it's not there, but it's there. They say that this element, space, is the mother. Remember the matrix, the great mother? It's actually the mother of the other four elements. And this is a wake-up to me. What appears to be space, if we could experience it in its undiluted nature, it's actually this phenomena we call consciousness. But because we're in a three-dimensional body and we're relating to things in a 3D fashion, consciousness has the appearance, the expression of what we call space. So when you think about it, that we're 99.9999% space, then we're basically consciousness, which is a modulation of awareness. In a sense, or maybe as a fact, I don't know, all of creation, that's including you and me, all of creation is constantly, I don't know what the word is, I'm using flickering, in and out of physical existence. Physical existence doesn't mean it's existing and not existing, it's the expression is a kind of flickering. As they say, like the virtual particles that are coming in and out of wherever they come in and out of, the void, the vacuum, this phenomena of emptiness. I'll quote my teacher, Lama Tarchin, who's now passed a while ago. I had asked him a particular question, and it's not exactly important to know the question, but his answer was immediate, unflinching, uncontemplated. It just seemed to be obvious. His answer to me was that it's equally real and unreal. And I guess in that sense, I would say that creation is flickering from the real and the unreal state, and that the combination of the two is what it is. These ideas, maybe they're appreciations, maybe they're facts. I accept them that way, and many of these concepts will allow a person to better understand the signal encoding theory in biofeedback. They'll better understand information coded biofeedback and how it behaves, how you can use it, what you can expect from it. So, sort of as a final reference back to this, again, it's just an example, one that's familiar to me. They're depicted here in sexual union, what's called the AXIOM, which might be a little like provocative to some people, because as an icon, they're trying to represent something here, and what the icon represents is that awareness and emptiness, or emptiness is unrestricted freedom. Let's just say awareness and emptiness are actually a singular, inseparable condition or a state of being. So that's why they're shown here in sexual union. It's an attempt in iconography to convey that meaning, that appreciation. So, it's very hard for us because of our dualistic approach. We have a certain conceptual perspective. We're really stuck in reification. We're really stuck on the thing, even though there are no things. There are events. There's no transformation going back and forth between awareness and emptiness. It's not like they're two things together, okay, like a male and a female in embrace. This is just a way of trying to depict it, but actually there's no transformation taking place from one to the other. The two of them are one. Awareness and emptiness, same. So in this sense, you consider awareness as having a natural potential because of its quality of emptiness and freedom. This awareness can express or manifest itself as information, as energy, as matter, while still maintaining its nature. You could say that information is the intelligence manifestation of awareness. Energy is the activity expression of awareness. Matter is the form expression of awareness. So these potentials are intrinsic to awareness because of the emptiness, the complete unrestricted freedom of manifestation that is inherent to awareness. So all the transformations that we experience directly or indirectly, they are transformations in appearance alone. Regardless of the appearance, all the expressions retain their essential nature of awareness. This is not the current scientific axiom. Although many from all sorts of different fields of inquiry, including many aspects of science, are increasingly understanding and admitting and accepting of variations of this same axiom. It is the fundamental axiom of possibility wave. Okay, we're going to keep going a bit more. We have to look more closely at some terminology. Let's see if we can't more clearly, from a possibility wave point of view, define information, energy, and matter. So let's have a closer look at these terms, remembering our agreement to not jump to conclusions. This is, it's fun, it's interesting, it's challenging, it's meaningful. Okay, so even in science, there's no single way of understanding or defining these terms, information, energy, and matter. They're really highly controversial. They keep on being modified, and they're certainly used in the context. And many of them do come out from mathematics. They've penetrated society in a certain way. There are lots of ways of interpreting and applying these terms. So it's really not so much an issue of what is right or wrong as much as it is about the concept, the context, and the application. So let's be bold but forgiving as we go through this attempt. Let's start with information. Information is the capacity to instruct or communicate with or without a transfer of energy. Now that's a tricky one, that with or without a transfer of energy. And we'll have to look a lot more deeply at that as best we can, as best I can. Simply, I would say that information could be considered the intelligence aspect of awareness, the intelligence of awareness, knowing that regardless of its appearance or manifestation, that awareness is always the essential nature. In quantum physics, this particular aspect of awareness has been a discovery, a shock, a fascination, and one of the key elements that is still perplexing within the scientific community. It's this thing called the observer effect. And we'll have more exploration of the observer effect in part 2, the part entitled Compassionate Communication. Okay, this is important. Because of the way in the popular community and the evolving scientific community, the way that terms like energy have been used so widely and sometimes wildly, let's sort of be patient as we look at this next point. Information. It's a subquantum principle or dynamic. So, there's all this talk about quantum, 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 quantum this, quantum that, quantum biofeedback, quantum, quantum. Here, possibility wave is defining information as a sub-quantum principle or dynamic. The term sub denotes, maybe demote is better, it denotes dimensionality. It means under, which is not really accurate, but because our language is so stuck in three-dimensional thinking, you know, it's like, I don't know, what do you call it? You know, other languages, I think Sanskrit is certainly maybe the best example. It's got all of these extraordinary words and terms for all sorts of states that, for the most part, you know, in our Western, especially English, we just haven't quite got there yet. So we're making up new terms or making composite terms or... Anyway, subquantum. David Bohm, one of the, again, brilliant quantum thinkers in the earlier and mid part of the whole game, he called it the implicate order. Not implicit, but the implicate. It's a hidden order to things, information. So, subquantum. We're going to be using that term in different ways throughout the relationship that you'll develop with possibility wave and information-coded biofeedback, because we're doing our very, very best to try to highlight, to expose, to appreciate the whole principled process of what we call information, to bring into form. You know, I was saying it's the intelligence aspect of awareness. It's a good cartoon if you can see it. Upper right-hand corner. In the subquantum domain, here, there, and where do not exist anymore. In some of the information sent out by Possibility Wave, there are some essays that have been written, that I've written, and they say, like, you know, it's easy to get stuck in the middle, and one of the things is that Possibility Wave doesn't believe in here and there, and you'll see why with the whole principle of information coded biofeedback. But in the subquantum domain, here and there and where don't exist anymore. In the subquantum, there is no movement, only manifestation. I mean, you know, statements like this are easily approached like Zen koans, you know, things that you can contemplate as a meditation for long periods of time and see what kind of eggs will crack. In a sense, the subquantum could be thought of as a kind of quantum potential, or even a quantum reserve, or something, or not a thing, something. So here and there and where, this is extremely important as a principal component of the possibility wave axiom, because we're working with information-coded biofeedback. And information here is described as being subquantum in nature, and in this subquantum domain or dimension, there's no movement, there's only manifestation, information. You know, in information theory, which is a particular perspective on the whole issue of information, landmark theoreticians, Shannon and Wiener, they've really, you know, created a whole new view of the concept of information, but from a particular vantage point. In any case, derived from their type of information theory, they say that information resolves uncertainty. That's just fabulous. You may have encountered the fact that in the possibility wave information-coded biofeedback application entitled Adapt Wellness, that the byline, the subtitle of Adapt Wellness is possible, probable, certain. And the issue of certainty in relation to probability, certainty and uncertainty. Here, information resolves uncertainty. And the more uncertain an event, the more information is required to resolve the uncertainty of that event. That's really elegant. That's really elegant. And you know, the Shannon-Winner information theory as a body of knowledge and application is really a significant step in scientific thought. And in this case, it's running, you know, either on a tangent or maybe parallel to what we're describing here as information from the possibility wave view. Okay, next. Energy. Energy is the capacity to do work and excite change. Energy is not a thing. It's a measure of activity. And what is it that's making the activity? It's impossible. Nobody knows what that is. I'm reminded of Richard Feynman's quote about quantum physics, which of course has a direct relation to this. He says, if somebody says they understand quantum physics, it means they don't understand quantum physics. He was such a brilliant person, such an incredible sense of humor. So energy is not a thing, it's a measure of activity. And I would say it's the activity aspect of awareness. That's fundamental to the possibility wave view. So because, especially within what I'll say our community and associated communities, even the general vernacular, the way the term energy is used is really complicated. So here I'm dividing energy into two types, physical energy and subtle energy. Let's first look at the physical. This is central to standard scientific concepts. Gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear forces. These are the four types of energy, physical energy, that's recognized in the scientific community. And electricity and magnetism and light, as well as the physical vibration, kinetic vibration, as sound, these all may be used in various forms of biofeedback. So in some forms of biofeedback, in one way or another, physical energy, standard energy, pulse magnetics, for example, you know, these things are used. Different forms of microcurrent, electricity, they're used in different forms of biofeedback. So energy, physical energy, is found within the domain and tools of biofeedback. It's a challenge, you know, even though that these are the, quote, real, I'll say the physical. In electromagnetic energy, which is the one that really affects us overtly the most on a macro level, our natural senses are aware of just a very small fraction of this electromagnetic energy. And up there you'll see a chart and it shows, you know, the visible light spectrum. It's just a minuscule percentage of the whole spectrum. So it's really only through indirect physical effects or via some kind of physical technology that we can detect most of the spectrum of what we call electromagnetic energy. So even physical energy is not necessarily evident to us. It's mysterious. Throughout a good part of human history, it's been made magical in its manifestations because there wasn't much of an understanding, and even now our understanding is still unfolding. So let's recognize or accept, at least for the sake of this presentation, that there's this stuff, this activity potential, this thing called physical energy. Let's talk about the subtle energy. Non-physical forces, and so many traditions have imputed the existence, the importance of these. These are forces that cannot be directly measured by physical means. You know, they're called different things at different times: the subtle energy, esoteric energy, spiritual energy. And these are just the English terms, God knows in other languages. So, subtle energy. You know, there's so many Oh, you hear it all the time. I'm going to send you some energy. You know, what's it all about, Alfie? So these two lines are quotes from William Tiller, just a brilliant, provocative scientist in Western culture. He says that subtle energies are real energies, but they're not directly observable because they function at the level of the vacuum. There's that vacuum thing again, space, void. He says, you know, they're there, they're real, but we just can't observe them directly. They have to be converted. They have to be made observable through some kind of intermediate transducer. And what does that mean? Well, you know, some kind of clever device, or the most common intermediate transducer is the human being. I mean, it's us, you know, that we have experience, we transduce, it comes from the not directly observable into what we would say to be observable reactions or phenomena. You know, quantum physics, it works, it recognizes the four basic physical forces of science, you know, electromagnetism, gravity, the strong and weak nuclear forces, but they say, you know, there's this whole class of phenomena that just does not behave according to these four physical forces. So, you know, non-local, we'll get into local and non-local quite a lot in part 2, compassionate communication. For example, this entanglement thing, they say maybe it points towards some new class of force. That, you know, it exists, it's well recognized, proven repeatedly that this process of entanglement between particles exists, but nobody knows how or why it could possibly. I mean, they could be separated by preposterously large distances, and yet the interactions appear to be instantaneous. It just doesn't fit. Over 100 years ago or so, Nicholas Tesla, really a very famous and controversial scientist, he claimed the discovery of these non-Hertzian waves. He called them scalar waves. And a number of different thinkers believe that these so-called scalar waves are an important component of subtle energy and information processes. You know, the claim is that these scalar waves are capable of having an information capacity or component, but without energetic characteristics. And also there are different other energetic applications. So there's a lot of controversy that still surrounds the actuality of scalar waves. And I guess you'd have to consider that they're a potential or an actual. They're maybe, at least theoretically, an aspect of subtle energy. Some people say they know, some people say they don't know. I have to say I'm in the I don't know, but maybe category. So it's so easy to get confused when you're considering the concept of energy, because, you know, certain aspects of physical energy could be mistaken as subtle energies, like, you know, magnetism, for example, which is a pretty hardcore scientific force for certain periods of time where, you know, it was thought to be mystical or spiritual in nature, and there are lots of examples of that. So it's possible to mislabel certain aspects of physical energy as subtle energy. And then, you know, also the same thing is true of what we're designating as information processes. They can also be mistaken for subtle energy. So you know, subtle energy is a tricky one to deal with. So, as you see, I was left in a pregnant pause there because of the challenge. So this is the way that possibility wave works to resolve this, at least in the context of honest communication and honest concept. Anytime we use the term energy, we have to differentiate between physical energy and subtle energy. I think we have to accept that subtle energy to a large extent, really remains unknown in nature, except by personal subjective experience. You know, when like a Qigong practitioner externalizes Qi, what is it? It's been recorded, you know, as actually subacoustical vibrations, but is that all that it is? Even the term Qi, boy, that's a real tricky one. You know, we translate it as energy very commonly. Is that what the Chinese, the Orientals meant because of all the different aspects of Qi? I don't know. I don't know. So, in this presentation, because we've got to create some kind of reference point here, the term energy is going to refer to physical energy such as electromagnetism and kinetic energy. And the term information is going to refer to all the other non-physicals, what you might call subtle energy, as well as pure information activity. So to give you our best shot, energy, if I say energy, it's because of a reference to the physical energy that is measurable and appreciated in scientific circles currently. And if I use the term information, it's pure information activities, that's subquantum, plus anything else that has a behavior that we can't measure, we can only recognize through transducing experiences or devices. I'm not going to call that subtle energy. Remember that in the subquantum domain, there's no movement, things just manifest. So that's the dictionary from Possibility Wave on the terms energy and information, and in between it, in a sense, subtle energy. We're getting closer to the end of this presentation, just to give you a heads up. We're working through some possibility wave definitions. This third one is matter. First we had information, second we had energy, now we have matter. So what's matter? Well, it's something that occupies space and has mass. It's the form aspect of awareness. The possibility wave axiom says that it is awareness. It's not that form has awareness, it is awareness expressed in form. So it's not like you have a watch in your pocket. Form doesn't have awareness, it actually is awareness. That's what awareness looks like when it takes a shape or a form. It's called matter. And reflecting back to Heisenberg again, I'm reminding you that an atom is not a thing. So matter sure seems like things, but break it down, take it apart, without getting into esoteria, staying hardcore science, it's an event. Okay, another term I thought that would be important to look at is this term encoding, because it's used even in the title of this presentation and is related to information coded biofeedback. When you encode, you convert information from one system of communication into another. It's a little bit like translating. You translate a message from one language to another, you know, from English to French, from Thai to English in a way. That's a code, you encode. And there are two basic ways to encode information when you're dealing with information coded biofeedback, when you're dealing with signal encoding in biofeedback. There are two basic ways. One is that you can encode through an energy process. And again, energy here is physical, it's electrical or magnetic or photonic, something like that. I don't mean subtle energy here. You have a process that is energetic in nature, and that process ends up yielding an information code. Also, you can have an information process that yields an information code. So there are these two different ways, these two different perspectives or processes that you can enter into to generate information codes. And I guess it needs to be said, and it will be said repeatedly in the future, that in an energy process, you also still have the information process. You can't have an energy process without information being an aspect, intrinsic to the process. So it's not as though they're two separates. They're not. So here's a little overview. If you look at the source process, as I said, you can have an energy process or an information process. And we're going to be going into depth. That's part 3 and part 4 of this presentation. Each one is going to be, a pretty fat exploration of what it means. How, when you have an energy process, what can you do? How can you get an information code out of that? And what's the nature and sort of the vantage point of doing it as an information process? And anyway, you end up with a resulting code, as you can see in the center if you're looking at the slide. And then you can deliver this as a stimulation in various ways. Once you have the information code, these basic codes, you can then deliver it as a stimulation, as a pure information code, as a sonic information, photonic, magnetic, electric. You could even imprint it in various materials. So how you use it, how it's delivered, varies according to the methodology, the technology. But the information code itself is the message. And that message can be derived in 2 different ways, through energy processes and information processes. So this is the encoding process, and all of this is highly, highly dependent on the behavior that is natural to creation, to life, which is why we've spent what may have seemed a big chunk of time in sort of a philosophical zone, but it's going to be very difficult to follow through with all of this, to even use with confidence these technologies if a person doesn't have a pretty good grounding in their view of what's going on, and to be able to differentiate it. Otherwise, it's very sloppy thinking, all sorts of kind of magical pseudo concepts come forward, and I don't believe that's to our best advantage. So, okay, it's been a little over an hour, and if you've taken this time, it's really much appreciated. If you want to connect with us, go to possibilitywave.com, and the other parts or sections of the presentation will be available. This is the end of part 1, the boundaries of belief. One of 4 parts to the larger presentation entitled Signal Encoding Theory in Biofeedback. I hope it gives you something to think about, and check out the other parts. We'll keep doing it. Thank you all for your time.